Hello everyone, today I'll be talking about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, specifically the cultural context of the novel. So it was published in 1818 and it's a landmark novel that influenced the popular culture and literature as well. The novel explores a lot of themes such as creation, ambition, consequences of defying natural order, Frankenstein, and understanding the cultural context of Frankenstein illustrates the anxieties and aspirations of the early 19th century, and this, again, I emphasize, is for the sake of studying the cultural context. So, first things first, scientific exploration and enlightenment. The Enlightenment ideals and the pursuit of knowledge. Um, Enlightenment was a period that emphasized reason, science, and the power of human intellect to understand and shape the world. Now, Victor Frankenstein embodies the Enlightenment scientist with his insatiable thirst for knowledge and his desire to push the boundaries of what is known, and a lot of the unknown is to be discovered, which obviously results in consequences that nobody wants to deal with, the creation of the monster. So he states, it was the secrets of heaven and earth that I desired to learn. And again, it is the soul, mysterious soul of man that occupied me, and still my inquiries were directed to the metaphysical, or in its highest sense, the physical secrets of the world. Now, this quote reflects the Enlightenment's focus on discovering the fundamental truths of existence through empirical investigation. Now, the consequences of overreaching ambition. Now, Victor Frankenstein's tragic story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overreaching in scientific endeavors and explorations without considering ethical implications. His creation of the creature can be seen as a critique of the unchecked ambition that characterized much of the scientific pursuit during the Enlightenment, relating back to the cultural context. Now, Victor Frankenstein's horror upon seeing his creation come to life, when he says that I had worked hard for nearly 2 years or something amongst the lines of this, and how he talks about his horror and I had deprived myself for rest and health. I had desired it with an ardor that far exceeded moderation, but now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Emphasizes his emotions and what inner turmoil that also reflects back on the idea of how the period of enlightenment was in terms of cultural context. Now, the Industrial Revolution and technological change, we've got to talk about the age of industry and isolation. Written at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, Frankenstein reflects social anxieties about rapid technological advancements and their impact on human beings and relationships with social structures, and this not doesn't always end up positively, as you know that Frankenstein is not really a book that you want to read to your kids to go to bed. So Victor's obsessive work on his experiments isolates, secludes him from his family and friends, mirroring the way industrial labor could alienate individuals from their communities. Very important phrase for the sake of your cultural context, which you would want to compare to another novel, play, or film. And again, this is a side story, but I would really highly advise students to go for the 70 point rather than a 30 40. And the reasoning behind that is because the recent years 70 points aren't that difficult to at least get an H3 on, but and you also don't have to use three texts, you can use two in the recent years. So instead of going for an intro conclusion and then starting the 40 point intro conclusion, just go for the 70 point and get it over with. You want to talk about how he says that I seem to have lost all soul or sensation but for this one pursuit. He indicates how his single-minded focus on scientific progress leads to personal and social isolation. Now, then, the creature that he creates is a symbol of industrial consequence. The creature can be interpreted as a symbol of the unintended consequences of industrialization. Just as factories and machines created both progress and problems, the creature that Frankenstein creates represents the foreseen and uncontrollable outcomes of scientific advancements. So when Victor sees the creature come to life, he is immediately filled with regret and horror, symbolizing the potential perils of technological innovation without ethical consideration, reflecting that the technological advancements of the Enlightenment era or period weren't always positive, as I said, but also sometimes resulted in very much negative outcomes and consequences. Now let's talk about the gender roles and feminism. Women roles, as well as their limited agency. Now, the novel reflects the 19th century gender roles. So women were often confined to domestic spheres and had limited agency. Now, characters such as, for example, Elizabeth and Justine embody these constraints. Elizabeth, for instance, is presented as a passive figure whose primary role is to support Victor, right? She was calmer and more concentrated disposition, and her supportive role highlights the limited opportunities for women during this industrialization period, which also reflects back to the cultural context. Then you want to talk about the critique of gender inequality. Despite the passive roles of female characters, the novel critiques the societal norms that confine women. So you can kind of say that this is an anti-feminist novel because Justine's wrongful execution, for example, underscores the vulnerability of women and the harsh judgments that they faced. It says, I did confess, but I confessed a lie. I confessed that I might obtain absolution, but now that falsehood lies heavier on my heart than all my other sins. This tragedy reflects the broader social inequalities and just injustices faced by women in a patriarchal society, which is very much easily compared to many of the other texts that you guys study for your leaving cert. Then you want to talk about the philosophical and ethical themes, responsibility, and creation. Maybe you can use some of this information for theme or issue mode if you're doing that and not cultural context. The novel explores the ethical responsibilities that come with creation. Now, I know I said this before, but Victor's failure to care for his creature leads to catastrophic consequences, highlighting the moral responsibilities of creators towards their creations. The creature confronts Victor, expressing his misery and desire for companionship, right? He says that am I not shunned and hated by all mankind? You, my creator, would tear me to pieces and triumph. Tell me why I should pity man more than he pities me. And the plea underscores the ethical considerations of creating life, but without providing for its well-being. Perhaps this could be compared to an instance of maybe an incapable mother in some other novel, or someone who's not able to raise a child well because why bring them into this world. So perhaps you can talk about this in terms of cultural context or theme or issue to discuss and compare both ideas. I'm just trying to help you think in the right direction. Then alienation and social responsibility. The creature is isolated and suffering reflects broader themes of social responsibility as well as the consequences of alienation. He's rejected by society and his creator, leads to a cycle of misery and violence. Also suggests that social and ethical considerations must accompany scientific and technological advancements. So if you advance in technology, you have to also adapt to new changes in terms of cultures and traditions, but not advance in one and stay back in other, which we see in many countries around the world at the moment. People tend to advance in technology, they have the latest phones, they have whatever, but they're still stuck with the old norms and traditions that they still believe in. So he says, I am alone and miserable. Man will not associate with me, but one as deformed and horrible as myself would not deny herself to me. Emphasizes the need for empathy and social inclusion. Then you want to talk about the setting being very much dark and foreboding. The novel setting enhances gothic atmosphere. Everybody knows that Frankenstein is a gothic novel and is characterized by dark, brooding environments that create a sense of isolation and impending doom. The remote and desolate Arctic setting at the beginning and end of the novel, where Victor pursues the creature, mirrors his internal despair and the very stars themselves being witnesses and testimonies of my trials and bearing marks of that malice which I could not subdue. These bleak landscapes reflect the Gothic fascination with the sublime and the unknown. Now, there something that I would love to talk about as well is the doppelganger theme and the relationship between Victor and the creature serves as a Gothic exploration of the doppelganger motif, where the creature represents Victor's dark and unacknowledged aspects. So the creature's existence forces Victor to confront the consequences of his actions and dark side of the mission. Then you'll talk about how Victor's frequent encounters with the creature adds to the novel's nightmarish vision and horror. Now, when Victor spots the creature in the Swiss Alps, he is filled with dread. I perceived in the gloom a figure which stole from behind a clump of trees near me. I stood fixed, gazing intently. I could not be mistaken. This kind of scene talks or captures a lot of the terror and uncanny elements central to the Gothic literature. Now, perhaps if you would want to talk about the influence of alchemy, that while grounded in Enlightenment science, the novel also incorporates elements of alchemy, an earlier and more mystical form of proto-science. Now, Victor's study of alchemists like Paracelsus and Magnus reflects the transitional nature of his quest for knowledge. This blend of ancient and modern scientific thought highlights the period's intellectual shifts. Then you want to talk about the urbanization and alienation, and the novel indirectly comments on the alienation brought by urbanization and industrial revolution. This is merely cultural context in terms of setting, and Victor's retreat to remote locations like the Orkney Islands to create the female creature, because if you remember, the monster asked Victor to create a companion for him, and Victor at the beginning did agree, and upon trying to create it, he changes his mind, destroys the creature, which causes the monster, the male monster, the original male monster creature, to follow Victor and avenge himself against him and the human race and the society and every single thing. So there's the technological fear part as well, and for example, Elizabeth's letters are very important, how she expresses her concerns and desires. They reflect the limited means available to women to influence their destinies. Her attempts to reconnect with Victor and maintain the relationship highlight her constrained position. She says, "Get well and return to us. You will find a happy, cheerful home and friends who love you dearly." These letters serve as a reminder of the domestic roles that are served or expected of women in this era. Um, then think of nature versus nurture as a theme. Shelley explores the nature versus nurture debate through the creature's development. Initially benevolent, the creature becomes violent only after being repeatedly rejected and mistreated by humans. And this evolution raises question about the influence of in the environment and social acceptance on behavior, and this is also related to the era in which this has occurred. So you want to compare this to nowadays, like AI and robotics and prosthetic limbs and all that. This has started to be an accepted form or an accepted change in society, and people have starting to adapt to that, but still until today's date, a lot of people in a lot of countries are still living in the past in terms of cultures, tradition, and they refuse to let go of certain, traditions, cultures, things that their great grandfathers or mothers have done before. So you advance technology, but you refuse to advance societal advancements. So this doesn't go well in terms of real life, and Frankenstein is the one of the examples that portrays this. You want to think also about the historical context and the social context of Frankenstein, and the novel reflects the period's social upheavals, such as the French Revolution. It's a bit deeper, so which this questioned established orders and sparked widespread of fear and chaos, right? The creature's rebellion against its creator can be seen as a metaphor. Now, remember this, it's for the revolutionary forces that challenge and destabilize societal norms. So perhaps Frankenstein was just not only a novel that was about a monster who refused to take orders and just wanted to take over the world, but it was a subliminal message or an extended metaphor in the novel that showed how a coup is formed, or like a revolution is formed, and perhaps leading to the French Revolution and societal upheaval in general. Then I want to think of, lastly but not least, you want to think of Shelley's personal context. Mary Shelley's own experiences and the intellectual environment she inhabited significantly influenced Frankenstein. Her parents, Mary and William, were prominent thinkers advocating for social reform and gender equality. So perhaps this has been an influence on Mary in creating her novel. And these influences are subtly woven into the novel's critique of societal and scientific debris. Now, those who are comparing Frankenstein, if the ILCs are around the corner, so you got a couple of days left, 9 days left or 8 days left for your first exam, which happens to be English paper one. I highly suggest that if you're not ready or you haven't already set, an exact novel that you want to compare, and Frankenstein happens to be one of your, choices or preferred novels, compare it to something that, works around the same idea of cultural context. You don't have to, limit yourself to the same era, but you are able to, I would rather have you choose something similar to it than having to go completely off. So, for example, I wouldn't compare Maradona to Diego Maradona the film to Hamlet. I would not do that because that is just a lot of, it's all different, and it's a whole different concept. It's just extra work. So if you're struggling and this is like something that you got no time, just try to narrow down the differences and have something similar in terms of themes, in terms of cultural context and all that. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something new today, and I hope this really benefits for your exam as a part of your revision. Thank you, and see you soon.